And let's do our. Anybody hear what I just heard? Meeting in
They're
progress?
recording. They're
Okay,
recording.
Okay, excellent. Okay, let's do our pledge of allegiance if we may.
It's good.
I pledge allegiance
Allegiance
to the
to the
flag
flag,
of the United
United
States
States
of
of
America
America,
and to the
and to the
republic
republic
for which
for
it
which it
stands,
stands,
one
a
nation,
nation
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty
liberty
and
and justice for
for
all.
all. Thank you. Did everybody get a chance to, it was kind of Lisa to stand in for Kathy last month and do the meetings. Did everybody get a chance to look at the minutes? Any comments on the minutes? I found they were excellent and complete. Thank you, Lisa. So do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll motion to approve the minutes.
Second? By acclamation, shall we approve?
Approved. Yes, thank you.
Excellent. Charlie, welcome on board. Thanks. Thanks for coming. I was just explaining, we're Zooming because we could have only had halftime on the room because of the shift in the Board of Commissioners. So hopefully next month we'll be live. And is that Moira with us as well? Excellent. We have the entire complement of folks.
Hi, good evening. Can I just jump in and apologize that I
please.
may have to leave early? We have a conflict with the Board of Commissioners meeting executive session. So I will sneak off if I have to, but I just wanted to say hello and I'll stick around for at least 30 minutes.
Excellent. And we'll try and get any agenda items in while we've got you here. And thanks for joining. Thanks for your efforts. So we are back into the welcome and farewell and recruitment and meeting norms piece. I feel very sad that we were unable to give Jane an appropriate farewell. And now this month we have another farewell that we are unable to make in person. And I know I will feel lost for a while without Marie and her efforts for the township, for the governance of the township, and for her assistance with the Board of Health. And I saw that several people sent out emails thanking her and appreciated that. Let me add that because Marie's new job is in the incipient county health department, I spoke with Marie and I asked her if she would be willing to be part of the team that will update us on progress on the formation of that board. And so I'll give you a little bit more about that in a few minutes, but she said she'd be happy to, so that when we figured that with the transition going on, it would be best to wait till November, although originally the plan had been an October update. We'll have an update in November, and if it's possible, Marie will join that team, and we'll get a chance to see her and say hello and hello, goodbye. It reminds me of Groucho Marx. Hello, I must be going. I came to stay, I just can't stay. I must be going. So that's the farewell. The welcome is Kevin Kuchenski. You want to take a minute and introduce yourself to the board?
Good evening, board. I'm sure we've had some communications over the years. Director of Community Development, while the county is standing up their aspect of the health department, the township responsibilities still endure. So we'll be making sure, working with staff and our consultants, that we're out there doing all of the inspections and requirements and plan reviews. So if there's anything that you need, we're trying to fill Marie's shoes as best as we can with what we have. It's a monumental task, but we'll get it done. And if there's anything that you guys need, just please reach out at any time to me, or Mary Ann Cassidy will be the liaison also assisting me. You'll see either me or her coming to the board meetings.
I wanted to
Thank you, Kevin.
I want to take a second to thank Kevin and Mary Ann for the help they provided thus far, and moving forward, the help that we that we'll need and expect. So thank you very much, Kevin, for what you've done already and what we hope to hear from you. So
Oh, Dr. Simmons, just apologize. Just I have that same conflict that Commissioner Mulroney has, so I will be stepping out about 6 o'clock to then
All
prep
right.
the commissioners meeting. So
Great.
I don't want to interrupt the meeting as it's in flow, but just people see me disappear. It's because I got to jump into the other meeting.
Thank you. So that's the farewell and the welcome so far. We have more welcomes coming, but let's save that for the intern project, which is the next agenda item. But before we move on to that, I want to thank everybody for being as prompt as they were today, and for what I'm trying to do, that it seems to be taking hold, is to get us to move towards a more executive style of meeting with accountabilities, and I want to thank everybody for cooperation there. But the real additional item on this agenda item that I wanted to cover off on was recruitment. A member of the township in my ward, 4th Ward, in Lisa Borowski's ward, applied for one of our open positions. This is an eminently qualified individual who I think will be a great addition to the board. He is actually meeting with the Board of Commissioners at their meeting tonight. In his review session, I had the opportunity to interview him, as did Lisa, and I think it will be a great addition to bring him on board. And so hopefully at our next meeting, we'll have at least one of the 3 empty chairs filled, assuming all goes well at the Board of Commissioners meeting. And Alex had suggested that there was somebody that he was in contact with who might be interested. Do you want to update us on that?
I mean, I've had a few people that I have reached out to. I have 4 people that I know of whose I've forwarded Bill's email to in terms of sending their resumes to. I don't know,
Great.
what the progress is on any of that, but whether they ended up applying or not. But
Well, if we could just hit 250, we'd have another
Yeah, really.
seat filled. So hopefully it works out that way. So we'll keep looking. I know that Lisa Borowski sends out a district email on a regular basis, and she included in her email this month a solicitation for volunteers for all of the empty board seats for all of the various boards that have vacancies. So hopefully within a few months, we'll be able to fill the seats and have a fully fleshed out board. So with that, somebody have a comment? Okay. With that, I would like to move to the next agenda item, which is our student intern annual project, and turn it over to Alex and Lisa to introduce our status with regard to our new interns and our new program. Let's not all jump in at once.
well, I mean,
Hi, sorry. I'm having issues with my Wi-Fi, so I'm actually doing over cellular. So sometimes there's a little bit of a delay. I assume that was an intro to myself and Alex. Am I correct?
Indeed, you are.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Sorry
Welcome
about
back.
that. So just an update. We had a lot of really wonderful applications. These kids are so qualified and and very excellent, and have a lot of experience and energy for becoming more involved. And we reviewed, myself, David, and Alex reviewed the applications, and we came up with 2 candidates who if you can, I'd love if you could just introduce yourself, nothing too, extensive, just what grade you're in, etc. And also to make sure that I'm pronouncing your name correctly. So I'm going to introduce you, but I may not be correct, saying it correctly. And then since notifications just went out last week, we haven't had a chance to kind of start discussing projects, but that'll be later this week. So we'll have a good sense of, what projects will be projects will be at next month's meeting. So our interns are Anna Ramesh and Hajun Kim. Anna, if you have a chance, you can go first.
You pronounced my name right, so good job with that. So yes, I am Anna. I'm a senior at Radnor High School. I have lived in this community my entire life. I've been going to Radnor School since kindergarten. So I really thought that serving on this board would be a great chance to give back to this community that I've come to love so much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Hajun Kim, and I'm a junior in Radnor High School. And I actually moved here like 2 years ago in this community, but like I'm kind of used to this community as like I came this community like every summer because my uncle is living here. So I really want to like work for this community, and yeah, and I want to like have a good year with this Radnor Health Education. Thank you.
And I
Thank
feel
you.
sad that our first opportunity wasn't in person, but as Dr. Simmons said, hopefully this will be the last one, and we'll be able to kind of meet together in person next month.
What is it? They say, good Lord willing, and the creek don't rise. So if things continue to go as well as they have, and hopefully we'll be meeting in person next. I have to confess, I failed to make the complete transition, in that since we said goodbye to Jane last month, Alex volunteered and has stepped up, and Alex and Lisa have seamlessly moved into their roles in being the mentors for what is one of the most consistent and successful programs of the Board of Health that over the several years that I've been a part of the board. So thank you, Alex, and thank you, Alex and Lisa, and welcome Anna and Hajun. Any other comments or questions about student intern? All righty. So with that, the next agenda item is health officer's report. And as everybody knows, that has up until now been Marie's purview and responsibility. And although we can continue to expect health officer reports moving forward with the rather sudden transition, we do not have a health officer report for this month, and we can expect that Kevin will help us out with that next month. Since they're usually informational and there was no, they're usually not action items for us, I don't see a problem with deferring anything that we might have this month into next month's report.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Simmons. And yes, we will do our best to capture this past month into next month's report so that there's really no misinformation or lack of information being provided to this board.
Excellent. Thank you. So any comments?
Just Kevin, if there's anything that you need us to be aware of, don't hesitate to reach out to us. I know you're lacking for support, and we're here for you.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. Yeah, we're getting the inspections rolling, trying to do our best to get caught up with that and continue those going forward, getting our food establishment license renewals out a lot earlier so that the restaurants are being provided notification of the transition, but also that until the county officially provides us notice, all local enforcement will stay with the township.
Thank you.
Kevin, when do you guys expect to be bringing on a new health officer?
I don't anticipate bringing on a new health officer at this point because that will all of those, I won't say all, primarily most of the responsibilities will be transferred down to the county. We are working with a third-party consultant to provide supplemental services to fill the gap in the meantime. So we won't more than likely be bringing in staff person in, but relying on third-party consultants to assist us.
So will
Uh-oh.
local
froze up.
be inspecting the restaurants, or will it be the county?
The county will be responsible for the issuances of all licenses for restaurants and pools, as well as any inspections of those. Sometime they're hoping in 2022, but they have not given us a firm date on that. So until then, we're to issue our licenses, at least for the 2022 renewal period, perform our required inspections, and then when we receive notification from the county, we'll transition everything over to the county.
So,
Sorry, Kevin, can I just ask who's doing inspections right now?
We don't have anybody doing inspections. I have a meeting set up later this week with our consultant to get those inspections on board. But Marie, from everything that she left with us, indicated that she was pretty up to date with those inspections. So I think we're working with the October round of inspections at this point. So I haven't had a chance to dive deep into the inspection reports, but I assume that everything is up to snuff on that, and there's not been any lag from the enforcement side of things.
Kevin, if Marie is in a similar role in the county, would it make sense that she just continue to do the inspections since she already is familiar with the restaurants?
Well, that will be up to the county to determine how they're going to facilitate that, what inspectors that they assign to which municipalities. The township will be out of that once they take over it. So it very well could be Marie, or she could have a team of inspectors and they have certain assignments. I don't know what the structure is. I think that they're building up the department now. So until they have that department staff, they're not quite sure who they have. And I would imagine who's going to be assigned to what areas. But we're on board. We'll be staffing it appropriately so that we're not missing any of our required inspections. So that I can assure you that we will be on top of the inspections.
Okay.
And since we're on this topic, it was third bullet point under all business, but I already had touched on it in discussing Marie, and you guys have done a pretty thorough job of vetting Kevin on this. There are a couple of other issues that I would raise on the follow-up with the formation of the Delaware County Department of Health. The county has sent communications to the Board of Commissioners, and they've made it clear that one of their areas of purview will be licensing and inspections, and you've covered off on that already. They've also made it clear that municipal boards of health don't really have a basis in state law from the point of view of being agencies of creating or executing health law and regulation. But since our board is really not constituted to create or execute legislation, but exists as an advisory committee to provide counsel to the Board of Commissioners and to the township's staff, we really don't fall inside any preclusion in law from our ongoing existence. So I had a meeting with Bill White today, and we discussed that, and I expect, although I don't promise, but I expect that we will continue to exist, and that we will exist in a very similar role to the role that we've already served. I actually had the privilege. Bill White forwarded me one of the most recent letter from the county. And I didn't see anything in it that I thought might be confidential, but since he forwarded the letter was to him and he forwarded it to me, I want to make sure that I have his permission. And if I do, I'll send that letter out to everybody this week. There's a lot of information there about what is the remit, what is the purview, and what is the timeline of what we can expect moving forward. So moving forward, I'll assuming Bill's okay with that, I'll send that letter out. Everybody will get a chance to see that. And then next month we'll have Marie and folks from the county in, and we'll continue to act in our advisory capacity. Any other comments or questions about about the progress that's being made there and what we're doing? Great, so let's tick off another agenda item. So with that, we are already formally in our old business, and the first item on the published agenda for old business was the follow-up on the animal health ordinances, and I'd like to turn that over to Maura and Joan to give us an update on where we are. And I will add an editorial comment. I did say in my meeting towards today with Bill and Kevin that I think that is one of the most important things that this board, in the person of Joan, did do or start last year, and that it is one of the things that will be most helpful and advantageous for the Board of Commissioners in the township moving forward, is to get those ordinances updated and into scope and out of the first half of the 20th century and into the third decade of the new millennium. So with that, I turn it over to Joan and Maura.
Thank you. I'm gonna jump in on this if you don't mind, Joan, because I think I have to take the heat, which is I have not been able to move this forward yet, and I apologize to this group, but Joan and I connected, and just between travel and some other issues, I haven't moved it. So I'm getting an appointment with the solicitor so that we can look at all of Joan's great recommendations that would affect the actual ordinance. And if you'll forgive me, I'd like to punt this to next month for a better report. Unless, Joan, of course, if you have anything that you would like to.
I don't, if you want me to go to the meeting too, I'd be happy to. Just let me know, okay?
Yeah, that would be good. I'll try to coordinate maybe just a Zoom meeting to start out, but really sort of dig into some of the changes that we think would be easy enough to do that would bring our ordinance up to speed. So I will report next time.
Okay.
So that's great. I again take the purview of the chair and editorialize a little bit on that. It seemed to me there were three different classes of there was so much that Joan unearthed there, and that they kind of fell into three different classifications from my perspective. One was stuff that had to do with language and coming up to speed and up to what anybody else would consider appropriate code, and that would be able to be passed by acclamation by the board. Then there were things that the remainder of things would fall into two classes, as far as I could tell. Those that might require legislation as opposed to just acclamation for change in language on the part of the Board of Commissioners that would not have a budget attached to them, and those that would be require legislation on the part of the Board of Commissioners and would have a budget attached to them, and that would be not only the three classes that I would put them in, but in that order of our ability to make things move. Is that an accurate description from your point of view, Maura?
Yes, I think that's fair. Certainly.
And so this is something that, although, so if we're 70 years behind, it's probably okay to be 70 years and a month behind, and that it may take the entire year to move it forward. But I think that this will probably be a standing item on our agenda as you guys work through. So thanks in advance, in post and in advance for your efforts. So we'll be sure and put that on the agenda for next month. And with that, let's move to the next agenda point, which I'll turn it over to Alex and Maura again, lucky Maura, for an update. Again, this is an item that I did raise in my meeting with Bill White today, and that is what we can do to firm up or further tether the relationship of the Board of Health to the school board. And I wonder if either of you have any comments or insights on how that's going, or whether we should change directions, or what we might need to do to move that forward.
For my quick update is that I did have a good conversation with Susan Stern, who's the chair of the school board, and she was going into one of their executive meetings a week or so ago and had it on the agenda to raise with the powers that be there, whether we're looking at high school level and the principal, or whether she needs to go to the superintendent was unclear to me. So I will be following up with her to see what response I was asking her to just sort of get a sense of the board, if they thought this was something that we'd be able to develop a better relationship, maybe even an assigned liaison to this Board of Health. So I moved that one just a little bit, nudged that one a little bit down the road, and I can report back by email as soon as I reconnect with Susan Stern on where that is.
Excellent. Alex, did you have any comments there?
In my own interactions with the school board have sort of similar to Maura, that some members definitely seem interested. I think we may experience some more success with that in the next month or two, only because especially at this point, half of the board is concentrated on running for re-election at this point. So I think we may be able to get some more movement done once we're past November 2nd.
So that actually addresses the question I was going to ask more. So it is the board on an annual basis renews half of the board, or what's the structure of their election process?
So yeah, it's every other year. So there's about half the board is up for re-election now. November 2nd is election day. I hope everybody's registered and has their plan to vote. Little plug there for civic engagement.
It all starts at the local level, doesn't it?
In person, we'll have the band for sure. So yeah, it's unfortunate that when you are dealing with elected officials, they get a bit distracted at every 2. So this half is either re-elected or unseated, with the board, the new board, whatever the makeup, will start in January, be sworn in. So it's not that there will not be any activity after the election. Definitely attention will be easier to get after November 2nd, but they still have a couple of months of work to do, even if they are not reelected. So I'm not suggesting we wait until January with any new makeup, but just keep plugging away with the group we have.
So, and I want to, as you point out, since there is a natural turnover as a consequence of elections in the boards, I think it would be important to find somebody who was more on the staff side as our liaison and tether. And I want to make sure that there's no sense that we're trying to usurp any power or authority or reach into places that we don't belong, but rather that we want to serve the community by tethering our activities to what is important to the one of the most important aspects of the township, and that is our schools and our kids. So another editorial comment on my part.
I mean, David, we used to have a staff member back in the day. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, I'd like to reestablish that connection. I think it would be good for us and good for them. Any other comments there? Okay, we've covered the Delaware County issue. The next, I'm going to turn back to actually, I should have put Joan and myself. This is the road safety in Radnor Township is a bit of a distillation of an issue. It is not adequate or complete in covering the issue that Joan raised a couple of meetings ago. But with regard to what places that we can go and impact that we can make, the road safety is one of the issues, I think, for protecting the environment that we value in the township. I think others include habitat for wild animals and animal ordinances for domestic animals. But the front of mind one was road safety. So let me Joan, give you a chance to weigh in there and then circle back on that. Joan, you're muted. Joan, you're muted.
Okay, thanks, David. First of all, I haven't had a chance to reach out to the Traffic Safety Division. I want to find out which roads are state roads, and based on that, what the township would have to do in terms of working with the state to add any signage like wildlife or deer crossing signs. I did kind of keep a tally of the dead animals that I did see casually. I haven't been looking, but the ones that I saw 5 raccoons, 2 foxes, and we'll call them dogs because, as I said, foxes are dogs, 4 groundhogs, a skunk, a rabbit, and 3 deer. And I pictures of. Stop and take pictures of. I am curious. I was thinking about the deer issue, and we do have some legal hunts in Radnor Township. I think that I don't know what's being done as far as the culling of deer, which I think is sort of an unnecessary thing if people learn to drive a little more carefully and be mindful of the times at which deer cross, because they are creatures of habit and do cross at certain times and in certain places that they regularly frequent. And people who take those roads should know the schedules. But I am wondering, if there something to think about is possibly relocating deer rather than shooting them. So it can be done. I think it's something that we should raise. I don't think it's anything that's ever been done. So there's that. And then the other thing that I was thinking about, and this sort of dovetails on it, the issue of animals being killed at a very high rate on the Radnor Township roads because we're a bucolic area where there are tons of people who live and moving into. So there's a real problem, but I think the public would be receptive to it. And one thing I'll say, sort of a barometer of public sentiment. I don't know if you all are involved with the next door neighbors, online communities in your neighborhoods. But I would say the people who post a picture of an animal or any type of story about an animal, there are hundreds of comments. So the community in Radnor Township is definitely all over this. I mean, somebody posted a picture of a fox at Whole Foods. I don't know if any of you read this on Next Door Neighbors. And I can't even begin to tell you how many comments and also how many debates about the fox has rabies, the fox doesn't have rabies, the fox has a family, the fox wants the food in Whole Foods. It was ridiculous. And what I see is a lot of intense curiosity, but also a lot of real misinformation. And I think something that might sort of involve the community in certainly the affairs of Radnor Township, but this issue in general, I think people would really like it if we did some sort of public education, maybe seminars, maybe once a month on, the birds of Radnor Township, or the zoonoses in Radnor Township, the diseases that you could catch from animals in Radnor Township, the natural history of different animals. What do foxes do? People get panicky about if they see a fox at 2 p.m. and it's definitely rabid, and then they call Bill Gallagher, and somebody goes out and maybe does or doesn't shoot it, but they have to deal with the issue and deal with the panic. And I think if people were a little more educated, I think they would enjoy it. And they would also, it would answer a lot of their questions and also allay a lot of the sort of misinformation and an unnecessary argument on the next door neighbors online community. Anyway, would that be something that anybody would be in support of, sort of putting together? I would certainly love to put something like this together.
So Joan, I think, if you're talking about educational and seminars and nature, a good place to start would be a conversation with Tammy and Parks and Rec, Tammy Cohen, who's our
Okay.
director there, and I would love to make that connection.
Okay.
Another thought is that although it's not a township organization, the Friends of the Willows,
Okay.
the Willows Park Preserve now has a nonprofit that has and I could introduce you to the executive director there, Will Nord. They are always looking for ways to engage the community and have a beautiful space for community programming. So I would love to, I think you're right. People in Radnor love animals and trees and nature, and it might be a nice addition to perhaps a series that's already undergoing, or create something with your expertise and others to present to the community. So I think that's a wonderful idea.
Okay. Thank you, Maura, and we'll talk about that. This is great. These are two great ideas. Two great places.
Hey, Joan, have you thought about giving, I thought about giving one of your, just a presentation to at least this board, because it'll be recorded for the public. At least we'll get something out. You could do that pretty quickly. You know how we used to do those presentations?
Yeah.
And you could do it on, try to dispel some of this misinformation of a fox. And, I don't know too much about animals, but you do. But why don't you put one of those together?
Yeah, that's a great idea. Misconceptions about local wildlife. That's a really good idea. You're giving me work to do.
Sorry.
Another thought would be, if it doesn't
No, this
work,
is a really good idea, Kathy.
another thought would be, if it doesn't work through the community programs, which it sounds like it probably would be through maybe even the library, because they have kind of educational programs for the public as well.
They do. I see them. Yeah, I get
Library.
emails about them.
And I think
So-
also mainline school night would also be.
And maybe something we can talk about with our school board liaison when we get one.
That would be great. One
So
other
this
thing.
is
that I wanted-
this is a rich conversation. I'd like to my brain works funny, and I want to organize the thinking here. I think there are three separate boxes that I'd like to put things in. Number one is traffic safety and highway safety, which affects adult and children, humans, domestic and wild pets, wild animals. I mean, and I did raise this with Bill White in my meeting today, and I think we should have Chief Flanagan in to have a discussion of what there is and is not available that we might or might not be able to do with regard to code enforcement and infrastructure for highway safety in general. I think that is a topic that it doesn't matter whether it's a fox, a dog, a child, or a human. We don't want living creatures being killed on our highways. What can we do about it? The rest of the wild animal piece, I think that we would be well served. I know that based on my relationship with you, Joan, we would be well served with taking the notion of deer population control, because I think you and I are very opposite ends of a discussion of what is and isn't required for deer population control. I think we should set the deer aside as a special population, because I can tell you, when this started 10 years ago, there were 105 deer per square mile in Radnor, which is an outrageously dense population, and something absolutely needed to be done. So that, I think the deer population is another discussion. Your idea of relocating them is an interesting idea, but I think if we take the deer population out and consider the diversity of wildlife and the other wildlife, like you say, foxes, raccoons, groundhogs, skunks, birds. I found a great horn. I don't know if anybody saw, I found a great horned owl dead in my yard about a year ago. bleeding from its cloaca, and it was clear that the owl had died because it had eaten a mouse that had eaten rodenticide, which is nothing but coumadin. And so I think that that is something that probably is a lot less controversial. And your idea of education and Maura's contribution, I think it's a great notion. I think starting with us is a good idea, but I think expanding beyond us and what we might be able to do to expand an understanding of the role of our wildlife in the health of our community and the health of our wildlife in that role is a great idea. So I don't want to keep piling on the same work always seems to pile on the people, because the people that are willing to speak up, and we will have more hands, but I think we should definitely carry this forward. And Joan, if you want to take up as an agenda item or as a special lecture, we can maybe mull that over and decide how to move that forward.
Okay.
Does that sound like a reasonable way to organize this thinking? So we'll get Chief Flanagan in to talk about traffic and highways, and we'll start in on wildlife in general. And maybe you and I, Joan, can have a discussion offline about how we want to proceed with regard to the question of deer and how we handle deer.
Okay. One other thing that I do want to mention, the other day on the Next Door Neighbors, and I'm not clear on whether the neighborhood was within Radnor Township. Many people asked this woman or where it was, and it wasn't clear exactly where this occurred, but the police department is involved in this now. Somebody posted their cat was in their front yard. They ran in quicker, and when they came back, cat was dead, and there was killed by BBs. I think it was probably a bullet, not BBs, because BBs do usually just end up in the skin. Either way, it was killed by some sort of projectile from somebody's gun type thing. And I'm only mentioning this because it's absolutely horrible and tragic. They got almost 400 comments as of yesterday. There's just an uproar about it. And where does this fit in with wildlife? And you can't change how people behave and the ignorance, but you know, if they're shooting cats, they're probably also shooting other things, unless it was a neighbor who just didn't like the cat. I'm not sure, but I just wanted to sort of mention that because it was on my mind.
Well, so if you will remember the first meeting that we had with Monica Taylor and the consultant who came in to talk about the county, we're fortunate in Radnor Township that gun violence is not a highlight of public health or public safety in Radnor Township, but it is in many of the other municipalities within Delaware County. And so let's just maybe we can keep that open in our minds moving forward and work with as the county infrastructure builds up and opens up and talk about that, because I think there are two issues. One is firearms and firearm safety, and the other is you raised the point of these community bulletin boards. Or I used to read with regular. There's the Nextdoor, which I get Nextdoor Beaupre, and there's Patch, and there are 3 or 4 that I get unsolicited emails, and I used to try and follow them, and I have found that the level of civility in those discourses has diminished dramatically over the last several months, and they've just become an extension of the incivility that we're seeing epidemic in our body politic in general. And I found it to be terribly disturbing. I raise that as an observation. I don't know if anybody else has had the same observation, but I don't know what to do with it. I find it terribly distressing.
Mm-hmm.
Have you noticed the same thing?
Oh my gosh.
There's trolling and just hostility for no reason when there are actually issues that could be discussed and addressed. It's distressing.
It is. I agree.
which is not good for anybody's blood pressure, by the way, as a public health issue. So anybody else have comments on this topic? Because we do have one other significant agenda item to cover off on old business.
I just wanted to say something because about Joan, that you said that that the deer are habitual in terms of when they cross roads at different places, and that was actually news to me. And it just made me think, I know we do have some traffic signs already that have times on them, like no right turn, between certain hours and things like that. I don't know if it makes sense at some point to think about putting timeframes on some of the deer crossing signs if you're saying that they really are habitual about when they're most likely to be crossing. I don't know if that's something to consider long term.
I think it is something to consider. That's a great idea, Alex. And, that's also something where public education outreach or seminars could really help people in understanding that, if you saw that deer Monday and Tuesday on that same street crossing at that same time, you're going to see it the next day and the next day. And so, people can think about that with their commute. Okay, I'm on this road at a such and such a time every night. I'll tell you, when I drive down Roberts Road, there are two Roberts Roads in the township. It's the Roberts Road between Darby Paoli and 320. Yeah, 320. Do you know the Roberts Road? That's like a hill.
Right, and then there's another little one on the other side of the Blue Route.
Yes, there are two, but the one that has the speed bumps at night, and it's right around the block from my house. If I'm driving down it at night, I never, ever get down that street without something crossing in front of me. Usually it's foxes. Sometimes it's fox cubs in the spring. So always something on that road. And then the road right by Godfrey Road by Notre Dame, that road as well. Always something. And and I tell my kids,
they tend to travel down the waterways. So the creek beds that's the migratory path for the deer population and the fox population, and they tend to be there's a great word for it, but dawn and dusk tend to be the times of travel. So I think that's a great idea, Alex. That's another area where Chief Flanagan may be able to weigh in and help us out. So with that, I'm gonna move on to the follow-up for our September public participation, which was a distressing array of calls from parents with children at Villanova with concerns about mold. And in the interim, since we had that public participation to this meeting, there's been a lot of activity on the part of the MWARA, the township, and I sent out today, I don't know if everybody had a chance to see it, forwarded a letter that had been authored by Bill White about what the formal township response should and would be. Maura, did you want to cover off on? You want me to cover off on that?
Yeah, I hate to do this. It's such an important issue, but I do have to run to the Board of Commissioners meeting. So I just wanted to jump in and say that I have been in communication with Villanova University on a couple of occasions around this issue and am assured that they have been as responsive as they can be. It started in a reactive way, of course, as reports were coming in, but I think that they have additionally taken some proactive steps. They've engaged with an outside vendor for inspections. I know the township, they've worked closely with Kevin and his team. The township went in and did some inspections. And from what I can understand at this point, there have not been any identification of systemic issues. It's not all in one building. It's not just in a new dorm or a very old dorm. It's rooms here and there that may have had issue. I would also, and David, you can sort of jump into more detail. I know that you got in the note from the township manager, Bill White, but about our township approach. But I would like to commend the university. I think they are taking it very seriously. They are remediating anything that they find, and some of it may be the issues around some air conditioning units running while windows are open. So they're trying to work with the students to explain that might be a cause of some of the smells that they are getting in their rooms. And then finally, I'd like to say that they have done some significant communication around this issue that went out to students and also to parents. I'm not sure that it has alleviated all concerns, but it does seem that they are trying to attack it at many different ways to identify, understand the issue, and to protect the health and safety of the students at Villanova. So I'm going to jump off. I will leave it to you to do some detail that you've maybe talked to Bill White about.
Yes,
And
that's a
I
great
remain
summary.
available for any questions, or anybody have any specific questions can reach out to me offline. And I really am very sorry that this was a conflict today.
No
And,
apology necessary. Thank you for all
Thanks,
your
Mara.
support.
Okay, I'll
And,
see you all later. Thank you for everything you do.
thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thanks, Mara.
So I'd like to read the bulk of, not the bulk, the main body of what Bill White covered, because when I read his report and I read the report from the university in detail, it was in complete alignment with my understanding of mold, which is ubiquitous and difficult to identify, and of controversial role in human health and disease, and its mediation, which is around mediation of infrastructure and mechanics, and the role. And what I'd like to do is read this, because I would like to open it to discussion for the board. From my perspective, my view is that I would endorse the position that's been taken by the township manager, Bill White, on this position, and agree with Mara that it feels like the university is serious in its approach to these concerns. So let me just take a minute to read this excerpt from Mr. White's letter. The township does not regulate mold, nor, in my opinion, should we be in the business of regulating mold. Our research over the past 4 weeks has led us to the conclusion that there is very little, if any, specific government regulation when it comes to mold. John Rice's office confirmed that the state and federal governments do not have mold regulations. Then we researched our neighboring townships and could not find any mold legislation at the local level as well. After reviewing the CDC's recommendations on mold remediation, not legislation, and discussions with Marie, I believe that the reasons for the lack of regulation include A, the level of expertise and time required to accurately identify mold in its various forms. B, the medical expertise to fairly and accurately hold legislative violations accountable. C, the fact that not all types of mold are harmful, which relates back to the first 2 points and makes legislating it very difficult. D, in many cases, the development of mold is a result of sanitation environment and of the occupants, not the landlord/homeowner. And ultimately, E, Radnor's approach to inspections have proven effective over the decades, that when structural and mechanical systems are functioning properly, widespread mold is not an issue. For the reasons stated above, Radnor Township does not have the authority or legislation necessary to further intervene in this circumstance. To the extent our building codes do apply, our inspectors spent time last week going through these facilities with Villanova University, looking at structural and mechanical elements, and found no deficiencies. Now, this all applies to conditions as they exist now. If there are further developments with changing circumstances, we will certainly follow up. So I put that on the table. Are there other opinions? Is there other information? Are there dissenting opinions in this regard from the board?
I have some opinions. So the township doesn't regulate mold. That doesn't make any sense to me, that mold would specifically be mentioned, but the township regulates health and things that can interfere with health. And though mold, this might not be a mold that causes specific disease, if you have somebody who's sensitive to it, it causes disease in them. And so, the township also doesn't have in its code that they regulate athletic surfaces. But we worked several years ago on an issue with the, rubber surfaces
Yep.
of something in the, remember that? So
Yep.
that's a health issue. That's what the township regulates. It doesn't have, not every different toxin or infectious agent has to be mentioned to be under the purview of the township. And to, to blame it on, in the least bit, on the occupants, that the mold is there because of the occupants. It's September. The occupants haven't even been there. Those dorm rooms have been empty. So mold can be an issue. And I will say this, Villanova University, I've found, has shown other instances where they've had little regard for certain health issues with their students. When the building was being done on those new dorms, I would drop my daughter off at school and then go through that down Ethan Avenue to take my son to school. And every morning, I mean, we had to put up the windows because there was dust everywhere from the construction. And I would see these students walking through the dust. And I thought, God, thank God that's not my child walking through and breathing in that dust. They didn't provide masks. And, I'd mentioned it in the meetings that they should be told to provide masks for these kids. They didn't put up, until they were told to, it was when the project was almost done and they were finally told to by the township, they didn't put up any tarps or anything to try to shield those kids from all the dust. And then there was also, at one point, they were blasting the driveway, the parking lot.
Mhm.
And there were certain, do you remember that, Kathy? Like
Yep,
certain,
yep.
like benzene or toxins or something. And I don't know, it was just kind of.
Because how old the asphalt was, older asphalt, correct?
Yeah, but the university didn't turn their attention towards it until it was raised by regulatory authorities. So I don't know. That's just my thoughts.
Well, so what you say, mold is certainly is a health issue. The position that is taken is not that mold isn't a health issue, but rather molds are ubiquitous, and that
Correct.
there are no. It's not like we're going to go out and vaccinate, and it's not like as if there are pills to take. The remediation for mold, and I had this issue several times in my professional life. The remediation for mold is the remediation of the conditions which perpetuate the spread of the mold, and so the township's policies on building structure and on building mechanics, that is to say the HVAC systems have to be up to code and the building structure has to be up to code, are the ways in which we would intervene. And in the absence of any federal, state, or county, those being the public health institutions that actually exist, legislation regarding mold, nobody else legislates, rather they do legislate on infrastructure, that the township does not really have a role in creating a township legislation related to mold. So that your concern about the university is a valid concern. I've had concerns with regard to, for example, COVID policies, but I think they've done a pretty good job, and that seems to have settled. And the things that you bring up looking backward are completely relevant. But with regard to the specifics of this issue, I support the notion that I do not believe the township has the capability, expertise, or resources to take on as a public health issue something that has been deferred at the level of federal, state, and county health offices. And so that at this time, looking at the report coming out of Villanova, they seem to have, in this circumstance, taken these complaints seriously, and that the parents really need, on an individual basis, to deal with the university on the individual circumstances. And I'm very sensitive, as you are. You never really want to blame the victim. So I think that if it felt like that to you when you read this, that's unfortunate, but the combination of circumstances, we had a very, very humid summer and a move-in time. And there is, for example, if you live in an apartment building, your neighbor has mold, you're likely to get the mold, and their behaviors may be contributing to that mold. So I agree. I don't like to blame people who suffer from illnesses for their illness or victims for their victimization. But in this circumstance, what we really have to decide is, do we want the township? Is there something more that we want the township to do? And my own opinion is that legislation about mold remediation is not something that will be helpful, that we have the resources to take on, and that we should continue to enforce code with regard to structural and mechanical, and keep the dialogue with the university open to assure that what we can do, we are doing.
So I guess my question is, did the university communicate with the parents about their action items? Like, is that ongoing? So the parents are satisfied?
It seems that the university has communicated with the individual complainants.
Okay.
I have not spoken with them, but it reflected in both the university's communication and the township's communication. It seems that is the case. The additional question is, what is our role as the board?
That would be my
of
question
health?
too. What is it, our role in this particular topic? I wasn't at the meetings. I'm not too sure what the parents are bringing forward, but
Our role is.
we're an
Board of
advisory
Advisors.
role to the Board of Commissioners. Have they come to us for this, or?
So they,
Well, our role is that the parents came to us. I mean, they came
Okay.
to our meeting and
Okay,
they had public comment.
that's why it's on
I
the
mean,
agenda. Becca.
that's why we're,
got it.
I mean, I do want to, I appreciate everything Joan said. And I also, I almost kind of hated that public comment kind of because of the way it was kind of at the end of the last meeting. I hope that, no parents got the impression that we were like, washing our hands of this or not interested or anything like that. I certainly appreciate the parents for coming to us, and, there was also some commentary among the parents that this is not the first year that this has been an issue or anything like that. But I do also appreciate that we asked during the last meeting, or I asked during the last meeting, Marie, this sounds more like a codes thing to me. And her response was actually, yes, we have already looked into that. It wasn't like, oh yeah, we'll take a look at it. They had already done that work. And it sounds like from everything that's in the letter that the HVAC systems are up to code. But that's part of why it is a little bit the individual responsibility, is the unit can be up to code, but the university can't force every student to turn the unit on. That's, up to each, individual student to run the unit. And it sounds like from the report that we got that they do get instructions when they move in, similar to the instructions I got when I moved into my apartment, which is we request that you run the fan, at these temperatures, with this regularity. And that's, so my kind of 2 cents is I appreciate everything that was said about that this is, indeed a health issue, but it just sounds like the regulatory environment is that we don't have a role in this the way that the law is written.
Thank you, Alex. I think that's an excellent summary. So really, our choice is to act or not act. If we act, our only action would be in asking the Board of Commissioners to do something that they are not doing. I don't believe that I want to, as the Board of Health for the township, recommend that the township undertake developing a code where there has been no other evidence of municipal codes, county codes, state or federal codes, that we would be taking that onto ourselves. But I do believe that we can ask the township and the incipient county department to keep this on the radar and not let this fall off the radar, to maintain the dialogue with the university and continue to be open to the complaints of the residents of our township. Does that sound like a reasonable approach moving forward? So that
Yep,
we
sounds
support
good.
that we support the decision of the township not to engage in the creation of a new code, but we would highly recommend that this is a public health issue and that the township should continue to play a role in following up on what's going on. We good with that?
So good with that.
So
Sounds good.
with that, yes, somebody wanted to speak? With that, I think there were no new business items raised in the interim. If anybody has any new business, we could bring it up now for probably for making an agenda item on the next meeting because we are over time. I am not aware of any public participation, but let me stop for a second and make sure with Ian that there's nobody in the queue waiting to from a public participation point of view. And while we wait for Ian, I'll take silence as a no, but give him a time to make sure that it's not just a catching up. From a COVID point of view, now more than ever, two things. One is the hand washing that we did at the beginning of COVID comes into play again now as flu season comes around. Probably had very little to do with protection from COVID, but it has a lot to do with protection from flu. And I recommend people get their flu vaccines. I also recommend that people appropriately booster. I've received my third shot.
It is a little confusing, David, because they haven't quite got all the vaccines approved for if you're under 65 or no comorbidity. So the information is very confusing.
The information is confusing.
Yes.
I've actually found
it doesn't help that it's very confusing. Let me tell you.
Yeah, so I was actually, you lead me right where I was planning to go anyway. I think that there is so much heterogeneity now in every aspect. Should you or shouldn't you wear a mask? Where should you or shouldn't you? Should you or shouldn't you get a booster? And so on. Although I think that our CDC has had good science in the last year, their communications cascades have been very confusing and ambiguous. And
I agree.
So I would actually like to take that up from the holiday point of view. The critical factors involved in deciding what to do in the holiday is how much exposure are you going to have and how much protection do you have? And if you lived in a county that was hot and getting hotter, if you were not vaccinated and you were having people traveling to be with you from places that might have a lot of virus, I would suggest that you reconsider all of those. If you have family that you know everybody is vaccinated and up to date with their, it was easy for me, I'm over 65, but for those who are not over 65, Rochelle Walensky on the Pfizer side recommended that if you had an occupational risk, that those individuals should be vaccinated. And the truth of the matter is that the Pfizer vaccine was given at a lower dose originally, that the neutralizing antibody response to the Pfizer vaccine was therefore about 30% less than the neutralizing antibody response to the Moderna vaccine, and J&J way behind both of them. There is actually a closed panel with an excellent history and good public health follow-up for Pfizer, and that is the large Israeli HMO with over 1 million participants. And it became completely clear that after about 6 months for all individuals, and at 6 months, it actually started out being the over 60 population there. Breakthrough infection started with the Pfizer vaccine. That the breakthroughs increased from the end of month 6 to the end of month 7, and then at the end of month 7, there started to be more severe infections in the breakthroughs among Pfizer, and the data are bulletproof from my point of view that people should be boostering with Pfizer, and whether those under 65, when those under 65 need them remains unclear, and I don't have anything for you on that. Moderna was about a 30 to 40% higher dose. The neutralizing antibody levels were 30 to 40% higher, so that there is no surprise that the Moderna durability, because neutralizing antibodies have proven to be an excellent surrogate endpoint for clinical outcomes, that is, say, overall infection, severity of infection, and morbidity and mortality. The durability of Moderna protection is probably higher, and it looks like the 6-month point for Pfizer is probably the 8-month point for Moderna. Moderna submitted their application for a 50% dose for their booster. To be honest, I went out and got a full dose booster at the day of the end of the 8th month from my second Moderna shot.
Your third
Because-
one. You mean your third one?
My third one, yes, I'm sorry.
Third one, yes, yes.
I'm sorry, because my belief is that the neutralizing antibody response is proportionate to the dose, and that the neutralizing antibodies give you a very good sense of your level of protection. And for my own personal reasons, I wanted to be well protected. So again, if the people in your family are vaccinated, if you know where they've been, and the people have been in communities like ours where current transmission rates are low, I don't think that there's any reason to preclude family get-togethers in person. But if you don't know and people aren't protected, then I think that you have to strongly consider both travel plans and gathering plans. And that's my unsolicited editorialization on that.
Ian,
And
is there
we've kept
any
everybody-
public? Looks like Ian doesn't look like anybody's waiting for public participation.
Right. So, yeah, and Maura had said that she had checked in with Ian. There was nobody in queue for before she checked off.
Oh,
So
okay.
I do not believe we have public participation. So if there are no other comments, I want to thank everybody for your forbearance and everybody's efforts. And I really I am energized with the level that we're of activity that we've got going and
Well,
contributions.
Joan's
we're making.
busy.
Thanks to you and your
And-
suggestion.
And hopefully we'll have at least one more, maybe two more folks for our next meeting, which I believe is 15th of next month. And so with that, I'd like to solicit a motion to adjourn.
Oh, sorry, really quickly before, I
course.
know we just talked about COVID and the booster, but I do also just want to make sure, please, anybody who's listening, get your flu shot. There's a lot of suggestion that this may really be a serious flu season because last season wasn't such a serious flu season. I got mine today, so everybody get your flu shots too.
Agree
Thanks,
entirely
Alex.
with everything you've said.
Thanks, Alex.
Alex.
I motion to adjourn.
Second?
Sure.
All in favor?
Aye,
Welcome
aye.
to our new interns. We'll hear more from you next time. And with that, the meeting is adjourned. And we do have business in between, and
Yeah.
we can conduct that by email. So thank you, everybody, and farewell.
Thanks, guys.